Regular meeting of the Village of Tinley Park Plan Commission to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Croner,
Here.
Stanton,
Here.
Curran,
Here.
Engel,
Here.
Manny, Gatto,
Here.
Gray, Augustiniak, Shaw.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We are in order here. Paula, are there any communications?
My best communication is I have someone sitting next to me that I've been so excited. I've been talking about you for a while. So we'll all get to know her a little bit after the meeting. But this is the Kimberly Clark that I've been speaking about. And this is the Plan Commission that I've been speaking about. So she sort of hit the ground running. I think feels like she's been here for about a month, but it was just a week. So we've got her busy doing a lot of things already. And everybody says I look happier. And younger, if you wanted to comment.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Well, for my part, look forward to working with the rest. Welcome. Forward to working with you. Okay. Other communication, we do have notice of publication for our public hearing this evening.
And there was an envelope that was passed out to us right before the meeting. It's in that envelope that pertains to Lynn's. It's got a lot of stuff in it. We can look at it in preparation for next time. And then there's also a letter from
An email.
An email. So that's for you to look over before our next.
Okay, these have just arrived?
They just arrived, yeah.
All right. So that sounds good. We'll take a look at those when we get to our workshop here. First item up here for us is approval of the minutes from the January 18th, 2018 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Also like to extend my thanks to Commissioner Stanton down there at the end for acting as his chair on that and the meeting before. So with that, do we have any edits or updates or corrections for those minutes?
No.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 18th?
Question, is that date right?
That, if it is not,
should be the
that would be a
February.
pretty significant correction.
Right, it should be the February minutes.
Yes. That's true.
We've already approved January. Yeah,
Oh, at the top of the minutes?
right. So it should be,
There-
You are correct. That is as I said, a fairly substantial.
It's the minutes of March 1st.
Yeah, it was March 1st. March 1st was the minutes.
Oh, I see, for the
Right.
agenda, yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's my error, that's not my.
Oh, you are correct. The agenda is incorrect. The minutes themselves.
Our,
Correct.
right, is the
Correct.
March 1st minutes, but the date is,
Right, that's my error. I used the template over and over and I just didn't change it, sorry about that.
Well, still fair enough. I appreciate pointing it out. I was unfortunately, or fortunately, going off the agenda itself. So, now that we are corrected, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 1st, 2018 Plan Commission meeting?
so moved.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. Moved Commissioner Stan, seconded Commissioner Croner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And what do we have here? We have a public hearing this evening for the Southwest Chicago Christian Schools. 17171 84th Avenue. It's a public hearing for variations and site plan approval, or site plan review. This, I believe, we had a workshop a little while ago. You'll speak to that in the staff presentation, I assume. So with that, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved Commissioner Croner, second Commissioner Gatto. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is open. Pardon me for a second while I grab my cheat sheet here. Swearing in of the petitioner. Do we have a petitioner here?
Yes, we do.
Representative? Good evening. You wish to speak this evening? On this? I just need to swear you in.
No.
If you're, okay. Are you sure?
You might have to.
Yeah,
speak.
I mean, somebody may ask a question and, you know.
And isn't your consultant here too? Yeah, I
Okay.
think you should be sworn.
On the off chance, it doesn't hurt. I'd
We
hate
might
to
have
swear you in later, mess up the order of things on me here, and I'll get all confused. So, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have anybody here with us tonight who also wishes to speak, objectors or supporters? No? Yes?
On Southwoods Christian.
On the public hearing, Southwoods Christian School?
Okay.
None? Okay, great. As I said earlier in communication, I do have proper notice of publication for the public hearing. So with that, we'll move on to staff presentation.
All right, we have two issues for your consideration this evening. And as the chairman mentioned, we did have a workshop on this, but I see more people in the audience, so we'll go through most everything we did at the workshop. We have a site plan review, and then we also have some variations. The petitioner, Henry Dorn, who you just met, who's representing Southwest Chicago Christian Schools, located at 171 84th Avenue. And they are looking to build a transportation building on the site of the school, just to serve their needs for minor repairs, office, restrooms, and meeting rooms for their personnel. With construction of that accessory structure, there are 5 variations that will be required. At the workshop, we discovered there was one more that we were unaware of. So we are dealing with 5 issues related to the size, the height of the structure, the fact that it will be serviced with utilities, the fact that the buses will be parked on site rather than in an enclosed building, and that the fence that they want to erect around the facility, they're requesting for it to be 8 feet. So those are all things that require an approval of a variation, partly because, and we discussed this last time, this is an R1 zoning, and the R1 zoning generally contemplates a single-family development, single-family use. However, a church, a school are all permitted uses in that district, but there are sort of ancillary uses that often accompany uses like that, and in this case, the storage of school buses and transportation building is not an unusual use for these, but the code doesn't necessarily contemplate that. And so most of the accessory structure stipulations are really related to what you might have in your backyard or shed or something like that. So that's why we're in this situation of looking at these 5 different variances. So there I just showed you an aerial. It's in the south east corner of 84th Avenue on 171st Street. The property is 80. I know the size, I used to have the size in my eyes, but.
14.12, 14 acres.
Thank you, from the gallery. Saved me looking it up. 14-acre site. As I mentioned, there's 2 parcels on this, right at this corner, but the Faith Christian Reformed Church is distinct from the school parcel. They have separate ownership, separate property tax limit, boundaries, and so they are distinct, even though in the past some of the uses have overlapped each other, such as current parking of their school buses. But the Southwest Christian School opened in this location back in 1986 and had a K-5 school at that time, but it's grown to the point of being a K-8 center at this time and has over 300 students. They have 3 campuses. They have this one here, and they have one in Oak Lawn and one in Palos Heights. They have their Palos Heights Center is a high school, and as I said last time, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. So previously, these buses went to a transportation building over in Oak Forest. They sold that building, tore that building down actually. The school buses have always been stored on this property, surface parking. 8 of the buses have been stored just outside the school. In this proposal, they're looking to add 3 more. Currently, there also is the chain link fence around the current parking, outdoor parking. It's mainly there to protect the buses, and it's 8 foot to prevent and try to discourage any kind of vandalism. So they're looking to continue that with their new parking lot at, actually, this is not the new PowerPoint that I put in there, unfortunately. Is there a way to change it on here really quickly, or no?
That's, you had this date on there.
Yeah, no, you know what, I'll wing it, it's okay. It's not, I can add to this, but if you don't see it as a current date and PowerPoint.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead and see if you see it there. I can keep talking. If you see it, then we'll change it. But at the workshop, we had only identified those 4 variations that I mentioned. And we discovered one new one. Do you see a more recent date on there saved over there? Today's 3/15.
Right, that's what you've got on this one.
At 4/27. Did you open that one? Open that one right
That's the one that was open.
Try again. Let's see. Yeah, there's, because it's probably still open on my desk. That's why. There you go.
Oh, it says March 1st.
That's okay. Push, go down to the bottom. Just to make it a PowerPoint. There you go. All right. Let's see if it's the same. If it is, what happened? Sorry. Technical difficulties. No, same one. That's all right. So I told you about history. So the site plan that's being proposed, you'll see the red circle, that's where the transportation building is being proposed. It's just east of the existing school. You see at the very top a small gray area, that's the existing bus parking lot. And then you see the larger square area, that is the new bus parking lot. And the 11 parking spaces are to the east and somewhat hidden by the transportation building. South of that, they have existing basketball courts. They're actually planning on doing an additional basketball court. I want to go back just to mention here, on this existing site, they do have a lot of existing vegetation on the south end of their site as well as along the east property line. This is the inside of the transportation barn, just to kind of give you an idea of how they plan on using it. You'll see there's, the dotted line gives you the illustration of the size of a bus. They will do oil changes, washing, those kinds of, no major repairs either, just more or less maintenance. And they have a break room, office, storage areas, and 2 restrooms. The storage area is important because currently they have a cargo container on site, circled here. And with this new proposal, they'll be removing that. We identified that as an open item at the workshop, and the applicant has agreed to remove the cargo container, but staff is recommending that we place this as a condition of the variance, so that, or as you, I'm sorry, a condition of your site plan approval, just so we have a check and balance to make sure that that is removed. With respect to landscaping, there is, like I said, an existing tree line along the east side. Single-family homes are off to the east, so we requested some additional landscaping there that you see where the green elliptical is. I also want to see that most of those trees are preserved as much as possible. We discussed last time that there's 2 evergreen trees along the north end of the existing parking lot in this area. And so I'd like to see those retained as much as possible. So what I recommended is that with the site plan approval, we put that a condition of some sort of tree preservation plan that they submit when they come in for the building permit, so that we get to see those trees preserved as well. In the staff report, you'll see I had kind of an extensive dialogue between our consultant landscape architect and the petitioner's landscape architect. And for brevity's sake, the applicant has met all the requests of the landscape architect and met the intent of the code. They get credit for a lot of the existing vegetation that is on site. So really the two main items I had with concerns about recommending be placed as a condition of the site plan approval, and that would be to make sure that those evergreen trees on the north are protected. And then once we have the parking lot constructed, that we readdress what trees need to be preserved on the east property line. With respect to architecture, they have agreed to use, and there are brick samples here on the table that we can pass out. They've done the best they can to match the existing brick. They've also tried to somewhat emulate that front gable at the entrance of the school. So it is a transportation building. It's fairly limited, I would say, architecturally, but they have matched the building materials, which is something that we usually like just to see with an accessory structure with the school property. And also, with respect to the site plan, it is somewhat screened by the existing school building. I think you can see this, and by the existing church. So the red box again is the transportation building. The height, and I didn't mention this last time, but the height of the gymnasium is 23 feet. The height of the new bus barn is 18 right at the peak. That's a peak of the roof. And then there's some schools. I had gotten an email that the classroom walls are 14 feet, but I'm suspecting, is that really the top of the building at 14, or is it a little bit higher?
14 feet is the classroom wings, the gyms are obviously taller.
The other issue with respect to site plan that we always look at is the trash enclosure. So trash enclosure will also be using the same brick as required by our ordinance. All HVAC equipment will be located inside of the building, so we don't have to be concerned about the visibility from public right of way. So those are basically site planning issues. And at the end of the meeting this evening and closure of the public hearing, I sort of made it a little bit easier, Chairman, with respect to when we've had multiple recommendations before. I've actually identified them as two separate motions, so there is no confusion. There is the new trash enclosure that they're proposing, so it's in a similar location to where the existing one was. So now let's start addressing the issues of the variances, and really the subject of the public hearing this evening. So the property there noted in the stars in R3, this is a permitted use in an R3 district. Surrounding them, you see residential zone off to the west. There is commercial in the northwest area as a B3, and then you have more residential R5 to the north. As I mentioned, the school is pretty much separated from the single-family residences to the south, and there is the natural vegetation buffer in that area. So with respect to, as I mentioned, the accessory structures in an R1 district, as I mentioned, they're pretty much written with residential uses in mind. But the first one that we'll be addressing is the height of the structure. In the R1 district, that's limited to 18 feet. I think I just said 18 feet. It's actually 21 feet at the ridge of the roof. So I said a few minutes ago 18. You were going to correct me, right? So the ridge, we have two ways we measure roof heights. By definition, you actually look at the mean, but for whatever reason, accessory structures look at the ridge. But if you were to look at a house, for example, we'd be looking at the mean height between the ridge and the eave. So this needs a 3-foot variation, okay? I skipped over the very first one, and that's size. The size also is a variation. They are requesting a 2,400 square foot accessory structure, but our code only allows 720, so that's a 1,680 square foot variation. So we have size, height. The third one is, and this is kind of unique, I think, in accessory structure language of our regulations, you cannot extend any utilities, no sewer, water, gas. So that obviously isn't going to work for a transportation building, so for it to be functioning in the way that they would like to see it programmed, we need to see a variation of that section of the code that does not allow you to extend utilities to an accessory structure. The sixth variation then is parking commercial vehicles, and that's the way I have to define a school bus. You cannot store commercially vehicles in a residential district. So we're looking at a variation of that. As I mentioned, they have been parking the 8 school buses there for the past 10 years. Because they've closed down their site in Oak Forest, they're bringing 3 more buses on site. However, no additional routes are being taken. It's the same routes that have operated out of that facility, so there's no increased traffic. They keep these 3 buses for backup in case one of the other buses fails. Then the last variation that's not on my slide tonight, because I have a long slide show here, is the height of the fence. And as we discussed at the workshop, I was unaware that they're looking for an 8-foot tall fence. And if you recall, I wanted to research the code about this. And it is restricted to 6 feet unless we go through a variance. Commissioner Kroner pointed out that, if you recall, we recently adopted an ordinance making sure that it was rust-proof fencing, and they are aware of this. So their request, just in the area of where the buses are stored, that they be given a 2-foot variance to have an 8-foot fence.
And the existing fence is 8 feet,
The
correct?
existing fence is 8 feet. So I have your motion in here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to put it on the PowerPoint, but when you get to that point, the motion is written in the staff report, so you'll be able to move off of that. With respect to the standards, because we have two issues to consider this evening, I would suggest that we go through all public testimony, and then I can circle back and run through the staff's findings when we're at that time.
I'm sorry, the staff's findings on which?
We have for variances, you have findings of fact.
Right.
And then for the site plan, we always have some standards as well.
Oh, okay.
So they're in your staff report, but I think it will be more appropriate to run through your public hearing, and I can
Yes,
finalize
that's,
the findings.
I'm fine with that. Okay, does that conclude the staff presentation?
That doesn't.
Okay, great. So with that, does petitioner have do you have any formal presentation or anything you would like to add to the staff presentation?
Paula did a nice job of summarizing it.
Okay, all right.
Let me ask the petitioner a question.
Just
If I may.
just one second. So we didn't have any at the beginning of the hearing. At this point, do we have anybody who wishes to speak on this from the public? No? Okay. So, yes, Commissioner Kroner, start off with you.
You currently are going to put 11 buses on the parking lot. Would you be agreeable to somewhere in this variance that we make that the maximum amount that you can have on this property? What my concern is, and I know there's no residents out there, I don't want a school bus parking lot on that corner. I understand you have your buses for your schools, and God bless you, that's outstanding, but 11 has to be the maximum. And so, from my point of view, I think that we need to build that in here, that I want to talk to you about it before we discuss it after your testimony here, if you are agreeable to maintaining a maximum of 11 school buses on the site.
Yeah, I mean,
Parking lot is only.
yeah, yeah. We would be amenable to that, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that point, is the number 11, I think you just said it's because of the number of spaces? It's not?
No, they had 8, well, you can answer.
Yeah, we have, partly based upon the limitation of the site there and how many we have, 11 is adequate for us
Okay.
to operate our transportation facility there.
Okay, that's kind of what I was getting to. It seems like an arbitrary number. It's, to a degree, it's based on what your current bus count.
What our current bus count is and how many could, reasonably be fit in that part of the property without making it a much larger
Okay. So,
facility.
and at this point in time, it's fair to say you don't anticipate the need to go any more than that?
We do not anticipate the need to go more than that, no.
Okay, all right, so that sounds reasonable. We include that as a condition. Get to that point. Down this side, Commissioner Stanton, do you have any questions?
No, good.
Okay, excellent. Down this side, Commissioner Gatto?
No questions. No questions.
Okay, great. I myself, I was not here for the original workshop, and I did review the meeting, and I read the minutes. So to the extent the other commissioners don't have any follow-ups and feel that the points were addressed in the staff report. Fair?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So our order of public hearing, again, I'm not trying to keep pulling you up, but within the public hearing, this is your opportunity to add any additional comments if you would like.
No, we just appreciate being here in Tinley Park. As Paula mentioned, we've been here since 1986. Started with a small K-5. Now we're preschool through 8th grade. And it's been a great location for us here in Tinley Park.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. So if there are no other comments, I would entertain a motion to, I apologize, I forgot to have any public comment. It's a bit of a formality, but anybody from the public would like to speak? Hearing none, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
So moved, Commissioner Curran.
Second.
Second Commissioner Engel. All in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Public hearing is closed. Thank you. All right. So, given that, Paula, you suggested going through the findings of fact and the standards for variation.
Yes.
That would be useful
I'm not going to read through them all. I'm just going to briefly
to the extent
highlight
you have the
them.
relevant ones.
Yeah. Basically, when you're looking at a site plan, you're wanting to make sure it's not impacting negatively on any of the surrounding land uses, and it has adequate access, adequate circulation, adequate addressing of pedestrian needs. Because this is an existing school, most of those are all set, and we're not changing any of those. As the petitioner testified, the traffic patterns of buses coming onto the site and leaving the site and dropping off children, all that stays the same. It's really just moving the parking lot to the south and adding a transportation barn. So for those purposes, I would say the standards have all been adequately met. We talk about landscaping in those. We talk about the trash enclosure, talk about visibility, HVAC. I've addressed all of those in my report. Then with respect to the variations, you have your 3 main standards that they must meet, and then we give you additional standards to consider. But the first one is that the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if it was going to only be operated under the conditions of the regulations in the district. And in this case, because we have 5 separate variations, so we have the size, we have the height, we have the utilities coming to the site, we have the outside parking, and the fence. I aggregated all those with each one of these findings. So basically, you need to find that the property can't yield a reasonable return if they're limited only to the regulations of the district. So for size, they need more than 720 square feet because their product is a bus. It needs to be a larger product. It needs the height, again, for the product and the uses of the building.
Bring in utilities is necessary for them to operate as they intend to operate. The outdoor parking is necessary because it would be cost prohibitive to build a garage to put all 11 buses inside. And the fence they're requesting is to protect against vandalism. The second finding is that it's due to unique circumstances. And what I'm suggesting in this is that it is a unique circumstance of having an institutional use in a R1 single-family district. It is a permitted use, but it brings along with it certain ancillary uses that present a unique circumstance. And the last is, if it's granted, it doesn't alter the essential character of the community. Again, we have to address all 5 variations, but because the school has existed there since, thanks. The only new thing is the transportation building, but the uses have remained the same. And the building that they're proposing, they're matching the architecture and the building materials of the existing building, and it is somewhat screened by the church and the building that exists there now. The additional conditions are certainly there if you want to discuss them further, but those are the findings that staff is presenting to you based on the information and testimony presented at the public hearing this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. From any of the commissioners, any questions or comments?
You can
Based on-
change one size.
Paula walked us through that.
Okay.
Paul, I've got a question for you. The condition of no more than 11 buses are to be stored on the property at any given time, would that go into the variation number 4, the variance number 4 that we're asking, a variation from section 3.R.D, which requires commercial vehicles to be stored in the garage or fully enclosed structure?
I would put in with a site plan. That's where we put our conditions. You'll have 2 other conditions there this evening. You have the landscaping issue and the
Yeah, but
removal.
will that be, I understand site plan approval, but I want to make this a matter of public record so that 20 years from now,
Right.
there's 20 buses parked out there and we say, hey, what happened? I don't know if the site plan approval condition is one in which we'll find very quickly, whereas I know the variances could be looked up very quickly for this property.
Well, we don't often put conditions on the variations. We approve the variations per the approved plans, and you certainly have the testimony and the findings. And this record of this meeting this evening, the public hearing, will include his obligation. I think your strength is in your site plan approval, because they have to build and conduct the property in accordance with the site plan that you're approving this evening.
Okay.
And I think Kimberly has already done her first magical feat. She's put the motion on there if you want. I know you have it in your report, but she's added it to a slide, so we'll see if we can get that up there for you.
Okay. So I had a couple questions for you here. First, from the original staff report from the workshop, and as well now, any of the open items have been addressed? Is it?
Yes, and my other slide had that in red, but as you see in your staff report, each one of those have been addressed, in red, and then with respect to the site plan, and then the other open items are just merely the variations.
Okay. So I wanted to get clarification on one point. I think I heard this evening, and I didn't see it addressed in the minutes, that there currently are buses stored at the site.
Yes, 8 of them,
Fair to say, okay.
and they've been there for 10 years.
Right. So it's a condition that exists today, but it's technically not allowed. Is that accurate?
Well, I guess not. I'm not really sure. Again, we've had these discussions about files. I could not find any record of these, and the code may have been different at that time.
Okay. So potentially we have a documentation concern or some a change in the code, and we have perhaps a non-conforming issue. But again, that would be cleared either way based on.
Right. If they hadn't come in, whenever you, there are many illegal, non-conforming uses in our community, and they could be a consequence of a code change. they are not required to bring those into conformance unless that nonconformity expands. So that's why it's being brought to you now, because in essence, the nonconformity is expanding. And by
Right.
granting of a variance, if you decide to do that, you are taking it to a legal nonconformity.
Exactly. My point is that the reason it's coming before us is that there's a change in the current situation, which brings into play the requirement to conform with all the rest of it. And I was trying to just highlight here for the record which of these variations are out of necessity of the change, or we're throwing them in.
They're all a consequence of the new proposal.
Well, my point was that the buses exist there now. It's not like they're gonna build this and then bring in the buses.
Right,
Just
but they're
trying to clarify.
adding 3 buses, so that's expanding the nonconformity.
All right, so if there are no other comments or questions?
I think, Kimberly, as I mentioned, I made 2 separate motions on this, so if you so desire, the first motion is with respect to the site plan, and she has that up here on the PowerPoint. And those are the 3 conditions that we discussed, but then Commissioner Croner, if you want to add the 4th one, you certainly are welcome to do that.
Well, before we entertain a motion here, just run down here, I will tell you for my part, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Croner on that, and the petitioner has already agreed, so consensus, there's no objections to that, that when we make that motion, we'll include it. So, given that it was aimed at you, Commissioner Croner, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll go ahead and make a motion to grant the petitioner, Henry Dorn Jr., on behalf of the Southwest Chicago Christian School located at 17171 84th Avenue, site plan approval in accordance with the plans submitted and listed herein with the following conditions. Number 1, the existing cargo container must be removed prior to the issuance of the final occupancy permit for the transportation building. Provide a tree protection plan to staff for approval prior to issuance of a building permit. Number 3, staff approval of preservation of trees and plantings along the east property line after the parking lot installation. And finally, number 4, that no more than 11 buses are to be stored on the property at any given time.
Okay, motion Commissioner Croner, do I have a second? Second Commissioner Curran. Can we get a roll call vote on this motion, please?
Gatto,
Yes.
Engel,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Stanton,
Yes.
Croner,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes. Okay, motion carries, thank you. Moving on to our next motion.
I'd be glad to make a motion, Mr. Chairman. Motion to recommend to the village board the granting of the following variations to the petitioner, Henry Dorn Jr., on behalf of the Southwest Chicago Christian School located at 17171 84th Avenue, consistent with the list of submitted plans as attached herein, and adopt findings of fact submitted by the applicant and findings of fact proposed by village staff as may be amended by the Plan Commission at this meeting. Number 1, a 1,680 square foot variation from section 3.I.2.B of the zoning ordinance, which limits the maximum floor area of an accessory structure to 720 square feet. Number 2, a 3-foot variation from section 3.I.2.C of the zoning ordinance, which limits the maximum height of the accessory structure to 18 feet at the peak of the structure. Number 3, a variation from section 3.I.2.G of the zoning ordinance, which prohibits accessory structures to be serviced by water, sanitary, sewer, or natural gas. Number 4, a variation from section 3.R.D, which requires commercial vehicles to be stored in a garage or fully enclosed structure. And 5, a 2-foot variation from section 3.J.2.C, where a fence is limited in height to 6 feet in all zoning districts. These variations will allow for the construction of a 2,400 square foot accessory structure with a roof height of 21 feet, serviced with water, sewer, sanitary, and natural gas, with associated off-street surface parking for no more than 11 school buses enclosed with an 8-foot chain link fence.
Thank you. Motion, Commissioner Croner, second.
Second.
Commissioner Engel. Roll call vote, please.
Gatto,
Yes.
Engel,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Stanton,
Yes.
Croner,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. The next step.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next step on
Thank you very
this
much.
Barb will be in
is
touch with you.
to go to the village board, and the staff will prepare you with the
Thank you.
timing on that.
Yeah, I wrote it. I did, yeah.
All right. The next item on our agenda this evening is a workshop. This workshop is for Lenny's Food and Fuel, 19420 Harlem Avenue.
Oh, so we don't have any of these.
Workshop to consider granting the petitioner,
You know what?
Leonard
Go
McInerney, a map amendment rezoning the subject parcel
there any?
from R1, single-family residential, to B3, general business and commercial district, with special uses to allow the continuation of the existing automobile service station and automobile car wash. So, that.
If you bear with us just for a
Again.
minute, we're going to try and...
I'm going to assume that's what you folks are here for, to listen on that. I don't know whether this is clear, so I'll just go ahead and run through this. As opposed to what we just went through, which was a public hearing, a bit of a, as I say, a quasi-legal procedure. This is a workshop. In the past, the village has conducted these workshops somewhat less formally offline. In the past couple of years, that's been moved to a little bit more formal, being held in an actual public meeting. So the differences for our purposes are that as opposed to the public hearing we just held, public comment will not be done as part of the workshop. However, this being a public meeting, there's always potential for public comment at the end of the meeting. So I would assume because of your presence here, there's going to be some discussion to that end. I would ask that you hold your comments. Please, by all means, make some notes or something so we can come back to it at the end. Thank you very much. With that, can we have a staff presentation, please?
Yes, I had a little sidebar, but I'm presuming you touched on all the things we talked about before. The point of the meeting this evening is related to zoning. And this will, we have a anticipated schedule of going up to the village board. There'll be a public hearing here on April 5th, but we'll be taking this to the village board for a first reading on April 17th, and then for a final approval on May 1. But that is all tentative. You know, as I mentioned to you earlier, this is really at the board's discretion of when that will be. But all of that is listed on our website, so we can stay up to speed. And I apologize. I really messed up because I did the PowerPoint. We were in Chicago today, and when I raced back, I put the PowerPoint together. But it's obviously sitting on my desk and sitting here. But this is a PowerPoint I had done for the board on Tuesday, so it's pretty much some of the same pictures. A little history on this property. It's located at 19420 Harlem Avenue. It exists, as you see in the picture there. There is a convenience store, a fueling station, a car wash. In the convenience store, we have a drive-up window for Dunkin' Donuts and Beggar's Pizza, and then we have outdoor dispensing and filling of propane tanks. Mr. McHenry, the petitioner, had built this in 2015 with the car wash being constructed in 2017. He is petitioning the village for annexation. That, as I mentioned, is going up to the board because he wishes to expand his business at that location to include video gaming and packaged liquor sales. No new construction of any structures will occur as a product of that. There are 2 buildings, as I mentioned. There's the C-store and the car wash, and then there's 2 canopies, the one servicing the vehicles, car gas dispensing, and then they have a truck fueling as well. In considering the 2 issues before you and what will be a subject of the public hearing, one is rezoning. When you annex a piece of property, you're bringing it out of the county zoning. It's got, C2 is, I think, the zoning it's under now, but that's irrelevant to us. There is no, unfortunately, there's no standard of industry between villages and counties. We all use different letters and numbers, but that is what it's zoned, and it's zoned appropriately for county. It was built in the county. Coming into the village, staff is recommending a zoning of B3. I gave you a little chart in your staff report. I did analyze, there were 2 options to go with this, a C3 zoning, which is the general business and commercial, or B5, which is an automotive district. When you look at the pattern of zoning in our village, B5 is really primarily confined to car dealerships. We only have 1 gas station in the B5. All of that B5 district is up on 159th Street. And the B5 district, yes, it is labeled automotive uses, but it includes a lot more than that. It includes the body shops and outdoor storage of body parts, light equipment sales, heavy equipment sales. Those are all things that I wouldn't contemplate for a site in this location. Harlem is really considered a commercial corridor. When you look at the general corridor as it runs through north of this area, that's all B3 zoning that you'll see in that area. Village certainly has opportunities for annexation down the road as we move down south along Harlem Avenue, and if you look at the existing uses that along Harlem that exist now, they are primarily commercial B3 type uses. So staff is recommending that the best fit for this existing use, and again, we have existing uses, it's not a green site, is to bring it into a B3 zoning district. And with that, then you have either a special use or permitted use. In the B3, it becomes a special use, and that's why you'll have 2 special uses to consider, and that is the existing use of a C-store, convenience store, and the car wash. Typically, and as a project we just looked at, if you were looking at a new construction, we'd be doing a site plan review. This is all existing, so there is no site plan review required. Site plan reviews get triggered by building permits. They are not being issued a building permit. But with that being said, one of the things that I did do, and the petitioner worked cooperatively with us on this, I had our inspectors do an inspection of the property. I had our landscape architect do an inspection of the property, and our zoning administrator as well to look at the signage. We do that as a matter of course when we have any kind of change of uses or change of owners. This is a little bit of the gray area, but upon annexation we do conduct these inspections, and it's also important because as part of the annexation agreement that the board will consider is that they will be required to bring their buildings and facilities and grounds into conformance with all of our codes. And so in doing that, I wanted to give the petitioner an understanding of anything that might be out of our code. And so I gave you a letter in your packet that addressed any issues. And really they were fairly minor. Some of them, they did have some plumbing and electric, but things that you normally look at, and that would be landscaping and signage. The landscaping, there were a few deficiencies, and I've given them that list, and they will have to be bringing that into conformance as part of the annexation agreement. The other issue is signage, and our code does not allow us to require any signage to be brought into conformance as a consequence of annexation. So because it's an annexed property, any existing signage gets annexed as non-conforming signs. So as a matter of course, I've documented all signs on property, and that will be made an exhibit of their annexation agreement. So those 2 issues that you normally look at for a site plan review are kind of off the table. We've addressed those. So really, the main issues, the zoning issues that you will want to consider, and I've given you some standards to use in your analysis and deliberation, is the zoning to R3. Is this an appropriate zoning for the existing uses on the property? And the special use is pretty much in tandem with that, because the special uses are required because we're recommending a B3, and these are existing uses on the property, a car wash and a convenience store. The hours of operation, we often look at those. The hours of operation for the convenience store is 24 hours. The car wash is 6 to 10. And the Dunkin' Donuts is 6 to 10, 6 a.m., 4 a.m., I'm sorry, 4 a.m. to 10. I don't see that on here, but I know that from our last meeting. So 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. It's important, as with all special uses, that when we get into the public hearing and make recommendations, we always want to incorporate our findings of fact, and we all want to incorporate any submitted plans, and so those are listed in the back of your report as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. We can dive right into
Wish I could get this up there.
questions, comments with the commissioners. Let me start at this end. What's in here?
The property to the north of 194th,
Yes,
that is in unincorporated.
unincorporated.
And what is that?
It's an office. It's a professional office. It was an engineer's office. I'm not quite sure what it is now. And then there are two offices. There's one in a B4 that's in the village. Unfortunately, you have a picture here, but I can't show that to the audience because I don't have it in the PowerPoint. But if you look on your map, there's a B4, which is our zoning district, and then the one right on Harlem is in the county, and I believe that's C2. Didn't we find that, a C2?
Is there any thought to looking at, when we run the water line, we've got to cross that property,
Yes.
correct?
Cross which property? The
The
unincorporated?
unincorporated property.
Right.
So is there any advantage to adding that
To the
property?
annexation?
To the annexation?
I've already spoken to them. You know, we're not in a position to force annexation.
Right.
It would have to be a
It'd have to be
voluntary.
asking
But
them.
I've had conversations with them, and they are interested, especially because they'll be connecting to our water. Sanitary will
They
stay
would be
with Frankfurt.
connecting regardless?
No, no, no.
Oh,
The-
only if they...
Lenny's will be
Okay,
connecting to
okay.
water. The water will be there. It's there now. They could connect now, even without Lenny's. But sewer will always be to Frankfurt.
Can you clarify your point on forcible annexation? Why are we not in a position for that?
They're not completely surrounded.
Okay. That's the standard? I thought it was 3 sides. Is it-
Pardon?
I thought it was 3 sides. Is it completely encircled?
I'd have to go back to my case law, but I'm pretty sure it's completely surrounded. Is that
Okay.
your recollection too? And you need 300 feet of contiguity, and they have that, on their west side there.
Okay. Just to clarify, my question was to understand, not necessarily to imply or recommend that we do that.
But they're open, that we don't have any contiguity to the south. Our only contiguity is where you see the brown line.
Okay. Commissioner Curran, any further questions on that?
No, that's all.
Anything else?
You can look it up for
No?
me.
Commissioner Gatto?
I have a question. So the projected revenue, do we not currently the village doesn't get any revenue from that property now?
No.
It doesn't. So this would, who came up with this approximate $408,000 a year?
Mr. McHenry did.
Okay.
That was not part of our report. That was part of the report that went to the board.
Okay. Good.
Where are the deficiencies in our sign ordinance with this property? You said that you sent someone out to,
Mhm.
where are, I don't see them listed in our report here.
I
realize that you
started
say
the
it's not in our
analysis.
purview,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that we can't ask the petitioner if we grant this,
Mhm.
that we spent a lot of time guys on the sign ordinance. And I'll be honest with you, compared to, we want to maintain that sign ordinance. And so I'm going to ask you guys, from my perspective, if we move forward with this, that you take a look at our sign ordinance that we passed, and that we would like you to come into play with our sign ordinance, even though I understand what staff is saying to us, that may be outside our purview. I'm saying from my own viewpoint that I think it's important that we maintain sign standards in this town. And that is an...
Yeah, I appreciate where you're coming from. My name is Lyman Tiemann. I'm the attorney for Len McHenry. This is Len. Scott Pritchett is our planning and architectural person. I think he's been involved primarily with the signage on site. I'm not sure whether the signage currently complies with your ordinance or not. We've never gotten a response back.
Staff said that it was
It may, it may not.
deficient
I'm not sure.
where it's
But in terms of the signage on the property, it's not something that we want to, go out and change monument signs and change everything else. We basically have a facility that's currently operating, and we're asking to come into the Village of Tinley Park because we want something from you, but you get something from us also. You get a substantial amount of tax revenue that's generated from our site. I don't believe there's any major problems between our signage as it exists.
So you would have no issues granting and revising your signs to meet our sign ordinance, since you said there's no major issues?
Oh, I don't know if there are.
Well, you just said, I don't think there's any major issues with the signs. So I'm saying to you, if you make that comment like that, and I'm asking you, if there's no major issues, would you mind bringing your signs up to our standards of this town? It is an entry point, Lyman, Mr. Tiemann? Lyman. It is an entry point to our town. So it's a focal point, and it's important that as you're coming from the south to the north, and you see that, I don't want a structure that doesn't maintain our sign standards that we've recently adopted. So here's a case in point where I know it's an existing structure. It's a fairly new structure. You are bringing something to the town. The town's giving you something back. But the town is also asking that for that property, or I am asking for that property to be brought up to the standards of our recently enacted sign ordinance.
Okay. Let me see if Scott can address the issue.
Sure.
Thank you.
Scott Pritchett with Arson Associates. Actually, I'm not aware of what the deficiencies are. When it was designed, obviously it met the county sign ordinance. What the difference is between the county and Tinley Park, I'm not aware of. Although I know that when we were working on this project, we did work closely with Tinley Park on their requirements and tried to meet as many of those requirements as we could, not just for signage, but for all issues, including the buildings, the materials, setback requirements, landscape requirements, fencing, and so forth. And I remember at the time, the list that we had from Tinley Park was fairly minor in regards to things that didn't conform. But in regards to signs, I'm not aware of what those changes are, so I really can't comment on at this point what the changes might be.
So the next time, maybe when we have our workshop in 2 weeks, you could have a chance to sit with staff, define what the deficiencies are, and come back to us with whether or not you're willing to bring the signs into, if there are any deficiencies, bring them up to code. That you'll be back and you'll let us know where you stand on that, correct?
Correct.
Appreciate that. Okay.
Could you please sign them?
So, Commissioner Cronin, thank
Yes.
you for that point. And as this is a workshop, it's important
But I still-
for staff to get feedback and a thought about where the commission is headed on all these different points. So considering that could potentially be a sticking point, I think it's important for all the commissioners to kind of, at this point, give where their thoughts are at, so that both the petitioner and staff can have some guidance there. What I would ask is that because we're talking about an unknown, I don't want to spend a lot of time this evening going over all those minute details when it's hypothetical. But given that the next step in the process here, I believe, is not another workshop, but potentially a public hearing. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay, so given that the positive outcome that a petitioner would be expecting with some sort of approval, after that I want to make sure that we solve as many of these things in the interim as possible. So given that we don't really know what the gap is.
I've done an analysis of it, but I prefer to wait and go over it again.
Okay, so what I would ask is for this item, that between now and the public hearing, consider that an open item, and
Okay.
that staff work that out with the petitioner to find out how far we are in it. I
Sounds
will
good.
toss it out for the rest of the commissioners. My position on it is aligned with Commissioner Croner, in that, yes, we would like to see this conform as closely as possible to the village ordinance, if not entirely in conformance. I just want to run down real quick. We don't have to give chapter and verse on it, but any thoughts on that from the other commissioners?
That makes sense.
Agreed.
No, I mean, I agree. I think it's, to stay in line with it, and we put a lot of time into it, and so it's worth making sure.
Okay, fair enough. Commissioner Croner, going back to you, did you have any other points you wanted to run through on this? Certainly, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, I just have a question, since you're up at the stand. Why was this building, why didn't you did you seek annexation into Tinley before you built the building?
No, we did.
And why was that?
Pardon me?
Why was that?
The property was already zoned by the county, so our position this whole thing started back in 2013, 2014. The property where the gas station and convenience store is built, that property was zoned for a gas station convenience store at the time with the county. So our position was to proceed with the county because of the zoning that was then in place, and seek the special use permits for the car wash and the drive-up food service window. We were not successful on the first pass through the county on the drive-up window for the food service or on the car wash, but the matter was taken to court. The court approved it. The car wash was built just this past year. It opened up late summer, early fall of 2017. So that, there was never any incentive back in the early days to come into the village. What kind of prompted this, I mean, if you want to get to the real bottom line, is that there are two uses that we would like to have with this property that are not allowed in the county. One is the packaged liquor sales, and number two is the video gaming. What had happened was those uses were allowed at the county at the time that we began the process. But when the county saw that we were in court for the special use for the drive-up food service window and the car wash, at a meeting of the county, they decided to opt out of gaming. So because of our facility, the county opted out of all future gaming within the unincorporated area of Will County. They grandfathered in all of the businesses that currently had gaming and restricted gaming from that point forward because of our facility. They also modified their liquor ordinance because of our facility to reduce the number of liquor licenses from 12 or 13, whatever the magic number was with the county for packaged liquor sales out of gas stations, down to the existing number countywide, with the condition that no additional liquor licenses for packaged liquor sales would be allowed out of convenience stores and gas stations without the county board members in that district approving it. Those two things were directed directly at Mr. McHenry in this facility. When all of that happened, we were then in the process in court. The court came back, granted our special use permits for the drive-up food service, granted our special use permit for the car wash. And the next step, obviously, is we want to get the gaming license, and we want to get the packaged liquor sales to put this thing on an even par with other stations that we and others have throughout the county. So with that, a business decision was made to annex this property into Tinley Park. There are a number of benefits to it. You know, it's all part and parcel of the annexation agreement if you want to get into all of that. But there are a number of benefits to the Village of Tinley Park, and there obviously are benefits to us. We currently are on Frankfurt Sewer and Water. We're going to be switching over to Tinley Park Water, stay with the Frankfurt Sewer. We're going to be paying a substantial fee for running water main along Harlem Avenue in front of our property. We're going to pay a substantial fee, the cost of that extension, in lieu of actually doing that extension, because we already have the water service. We've agreed to hook into the Tinley Water within a year. We've agreed to sprinkle the convenience store within a year. We've agreed to sprinkle the car wash within 5 years. Are in the process of negotiating.
Excuse me, when you say sprinkle, are you talking about
Pardon me?
Fire system?
Yeah, fire system.
Okay.
We've agreed to a recapture for, I think it's water along 194th Street. The amount hasn't been agreed to yet, but it's a substantial amount of money. Everything we're doing there is permitted. There's nothing that we're doing on site that is not permitted by the county. We're currently in the county. And we're looking to bring this facility, not change the facility, but bring the facility into the jurisdiction of Tinley Park. And that's what prompted the whole process.
Approximately how many cars does the service station?
Pardon me?
How many cars a day does the service station service? Approximately.
12.
How many trucks?
You can get back to us if right.
Is there parking for trucks or cars? Besides, for the convenience store, are there rest areas in the parking lot for trucks where the trucks can stay and sit for their hours? I mean, if they're out of hours type of thing?
No. There is room to park. You can come in, park in the back, go and get a cup of coffee. You use the convenience store.
So how many spots would you say you have for diesel trucks or transport trucks to do that?
Instead of fuel lanes too, on the side.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be lasting there very long though with another truck behind them. I'm looking more towards trucks sitting in the parking lot. Somebody's out of hours and they've got to sit there for 6 or 8 hours so they get new hours again. And you've got all those fumes going over to the residents. So we're saying 2 spots maximum for trucks to sit outside of the fueling bays.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't gone over there, so I apologize, but I'll take a look over there as well. Okay. That's all I have for right now, sir.
I think just what you're trying to get at is there's not over-the-road trucks that are sitting there parked.
Right, that's the biggest thing, is that
It's mainly local trucks that are coming, fueling, getting coffee, and then driving away.
Currently.
They're going down to the
Current.
auction.
Okay.
Right.
Most of them.
okay.
Any questions, comments?
No questions, just comment. I mean, I just know from going to Lenny's gas stations and that, they're top notch. They're just, run very well, very clean. So I would only assume everything's going to be the same way, and he's a, good businessman, so.
Okay. So we're still running through details on the staff report here, but as Paula pointed out to me, it's probably a good opportunity right now if you would like to make a formal presentation. Run us through anything else.
Anything else I didn't pick up on?
It's
Usually
not required, and again, this is a workshop.
No, we've we've been in contact, pretty close contact with Paula on the whole process. This has been going on with your staff and our engineers and planners for several months. But we support her findings. We think it'll be a good addition for the Village of Tinley Park. It's a top-notch facility, well-run. Haven't had any issues out there with delinquency or police or anything of that nature. I think Lenny, his record, he runs a number of these facilities, and I think he's proven that he can manage these well, and he's run this one well and all of the other ones well. But if there's any issues you want to bring up that we can further discuss, we'd be happy to do that.
I just want to be clear, so it's for the record, I haven't made any findings yet. You might have meant my facts
Well,
in the
your facts,
report. Yeah.
yeah.
The findings come after the public hearing.
Right.
I have a couple of questions regarding, you mentioned the gaming and the liquor. At this point, does the Village of Tinley Park have still available gaming and liquor license?
Gaming is a product of state licensing. At the Committee of the Whole on Tuesday, the board considered creating a new liquor license that would accommodate packaged liquor only, no pour, at a gas station, or, I'm sorry, a truck stop as defined by the state
The state
gaming
statute.
state statute. So that is something that they just had a Committee of the Whole, no vote. It was brought before them, and then they directed me to go forward with the rezoning aspects of the project. So after we get done looking at the zoning here, it'll then come together at the village board where they will consider the new creation of a liquor license and the annexation.
Okay, so you would still have to apply for a liquor license and gaming license. That wouldn't have anything to do with if it's approved here with that.
Correct.
We're just doing-
It's totally distinct from us. But it's hand in hand. I mean, if he's not in the village, he's not going to be able to do video gaming or liquor. And if he's in the village, he has to have an appropriate zoning and appropriate special uses. So we kind of are hand in hand.
The property directly would be to the west, the homes to the west. That's unincorporated, or is that Frankfurt?
A portion of it, if you look where it says food and fuel yellow, and
That's
then
the
you
whole
look to the
property.
west, there is one road that runs along the south side of 194th that's in the village.
Right.
And then everything that white is outside of the village. So it kind of borders both.
Well, you don't know if it's incorporated in Frankfurt, or is it unincorporated?
No,
It's
Frankfurt does not, Frankfurt doesn't have any contiguity in this area.
The homes in the northwest quadrant adjacent to us are in
Tinley
the
Park.
Village of Tinley Park. Everything further south is unincorporated Will County. It's not in the Village of Frankfurt, it's county jurisdiction unincorporated.
Yeah, I can just show you at the cursor, this brown line is the demarcation between Tinley Park property. Okay, and then so all this is unincorporated Will County. In order to annex a piece of property, you have to have 300 feet of contiguity, and Frankfurt's nowhere near there.
And before annexing, do you get input from police and fire as to their ability to
Yes.
cover this?
As part of the site plan review, it's already circulated through my
We'll come back
department
with
staff.
comments.
Yeah.
You know, I do have one quick question, I apologize. Where's the closest school? Where's the school that's along Harlem there? Billy Walker? is
Closest
it?
operating school?
Closest store?
School.
Oh, school.
Yeah, how far is the school from there? I mean, that's not the building.
It's fairly far south.
Okay, that's what I thought, okay.
It's
Just
the
wanna
old
make sure.
Northern
Lincoln Way
Schenectady
North.
Farm, I
Yeah.
can't remember. You know, you've got Lincoln Way North, and then you have a
Right.
middle school south of that.
Right, okay, very good, thank you.
One more question. Do we currently have gas station convenience stores that sell liquor and have gaming in our
No,
community?
we do not. There is one Shell gas station that sells liquor, and I'm uncomfortable saying, because I don't have the institutional knowledge of other people, I think it was a product of annexation, but I'm not entirely, I've sort of heard that discussed, but I would want to research that before I tell you absolutely.
Any further questions from the commissioners? No? Did you have any further presentation?
Nothing further, but we're more than happy to address any questions you have.
Okay, great. So I had a few myself here, and some that have just come up this evening. So I wanted to clarify a few points here. You went through and explained to one of the commissioner's questions about why it wasn't annexed why you didn't consider annexation when it was built. And I think at the time you said there was no incentive to annex. And now the trigger is the county's actions to prevent you from having liquor and gaming. And
Correct.
Therefore, you are seeking to annex.
That's correct.
At this point.
Yes.
A couple of questions came up about traffic, and again, you made some estimates. Now, I'm assuming, unless I heard incorrectly, that these are estimates. You don't have any traffic studies or anything to support that, right?
You're talking about sales volumes, or?
No, you said approximately 1,200 cars, maybe 30 trucks. It sounded, I don't want to speak for you, but it sounded like an estimate.
Right. It's an estimate, not based upon somebody sitting out there counting all the cars and trucks.
And again, to clarify, because you don't have liquor and gaming now, it's based on your current business model, not what you foresee in the future. So even if we had a study that was current, it wouldn't necessarily be based on the market for liquor and gaming.
That's correct.
Okay. You brought up earlier, or I apologize, not you, somebody brought up that the state statute, or state definition of truck stop. And I don't see that referenced anywhere in the staff report, so I would like to include that as an open item so that we can understand what it is we're talking about here, because ideally we're looking, knowing that the intended use is to be a truck stop, I would like to know what the state statute, how that is defined, because effectively that's what we'd be recommending to the board for
I have it here
approval.
somewhere, but I can put it in the report. It's, so per the state statute, it has, for purposes of gaming or just truck stop in general? In purposes of gaming, it has to be at least
Well, I mean,
3 acres.
let's call a spade here. We're not offering any recommendation or approval for gaming or liquor license or anything like that. But clearly, from what we've heard this evening and what we've read, that's the basis for what we're doing.
If I might, maybe I can help you with some of the, Paula may have the balance of the answers, but when the Gaming Act was created by the state of Illinois, what they did is they allowed video gaming inside of establishments that pour liquor, be it a restaurant or a tavern or what have you. Also, they had a category for fraternal organizations, and they had a category for quotation truck stops, unquote. And the state defined the truck stop as a facility that sells diesel fuel, is on 3 acres or more, and sells a minimum of 10,000 gallons of diesel fuel a month, and has the ability to allow, I think it's 2 trucks on site at any given time.
Just says parking spaces.
Yeah, parking spaces for 2 trucks at any given time.
Okay.
So although the state created that truck stop category for the video gaming, it's not a truck stop. I think we've all seen truck stops. Mr. McHenry himself operates a truck stop in Joliet at 53 and Blairway Road, where you have parking for 50, 60, 70 trucks, and you have constant truck traffic in and out, things you would typically find on the interstate and things of that nature. Anybody in the gasoline business would not look at this and call it a truck stop. the state of Illinois, in its wisdom, carved out that category and called it a truck stop, just like they carved out the license for the riverboat casinos when that law was enacted way back when. So people they hear the term truck stop, they think of, you know, Interstate 80 over in Indiana with some of the massive truck stops and things of that nature. This is not that. There are trucks that come through here. Primarily the ones that use the facility are the ones that are involved with the auto auction further south. But there's a number of pickup trucks and panel trucks and things of that nature that use diesel fuel that have access to the diesel pumps on the back. One of the things we want you to pay particular attention to in the site planning, in terms of zoning classification, be it the county or be it your B3 classification that we're looking to come into, we have a extreme distance between the property line to the west side of our property and our fueling station and our building. I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe your code may require 25 feet or 40 feet or whatever as a rear yard setback. We're well beyond that. We also well exceeded the county requirements and the Tinley Park requirements for screening between our facility and the homes to the west. We have an 8-foot fence, we have a berm, we have landscaping, we have all of these things, a detention pond, landscaping on both sides of the fence, all of these in an effort to make our facility more compatible with the residences to the west. One thing that, and you're going to hear a number of people speak at the public hearing, and they're going to talk about various issues they either see or believe they see on the facility. But we've gone out of our way in every attempt to accommodate the health, safety, and welfare of the neighbors to the west of us. We've done things well above and beyond what were required by the county and what are required by the Village of Tinley Park. We can get into this more in the public hearing. This really isn't the appropriate time to talk about that, but I just wanted to put that on the table so that when you're looking at this, you're not, the mindset isn't going to, boy, this is a truck stop, we're going to have 50 trucks parked out there at any given time, and we're doing all kinds of things to harass the neighbors to the west. That's totally not the case.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with respect to that, what I would say about any particular topic of when's the appropriate time to get into it, as I said earlier, this is not the public hearing. We're not
Right.
making a decision to recommend or not recommend to the village board when we finish here. I would assume the hope of the petitioner would be that after the public hearing, we do so.
Yes.
For my part, the sooner we have information, the sooner we get things out there so that the petitioner and staff can work out whatever the deals are, any questions, to me, that's the point of the workshop. So I'm looking to throw anything and everything out there today to make sure that if there's some concern, it gets answered and resolved and addressed officially between now and the hearing, so that the hearing just happens and we end up where we end up. For my part, we've run into cases where we're in a public hearing and there's still open questions. I'm not comfortable making any recommendations if we haven't satisfied those types of things. So to the extent there are questions, I intend to hammer those out here and get them out there. If we get to a public hearing and they're not answered, I'm not going to be comfortable moving forward with anything. I'm speaking for myself as a chairman. Couple of points to make sure that we get these out here. You just brought up the setback. It's not technically a setback, but you said there's a very wide distance between the properties to the west and the structures.
Yes.
Is that correct? And I don't believe that's part of what we have here, but I'm assuming from what I've seen in the statement that it is well beyond any requirement we would have for a setback. Right? It's a buffer zone, but it's not based on a requirement. You said it exceeds what the county required?
I don't know what the county would have
Well,
required.
It was a statement, is Lyman your last name?
Lyman's first name.
First name, I'm sorry.
Right.
What's your last name, sir?
Last name is Teeman.
Teeman, okay, Mr. Teeman. Okay, you just made a statement that it exceeds the county requirement on Village of Tinley Park requirement. I'm assuming you said that based on something, so.
During the initial site designs with the county, we worked with them. They had 3 levels of buffer zones.
Yep.
One was simply distance, one was landscaping, and one was a fence. You could pick any of the 3 you wanted. Pick one, choose one. We picked all 3. We did all 3. And in reviewing that, and reviewing the Tinley Parks ordinance at the time, we determined that we more or less met their requirements as well. They had a requirement at the time of 3 levels as well. Pick one. We did all 3. So we far exceeded the distance. We provided a landscape mound with a fence on top of it. The 8-foot fence was allowable, I believe, in Will County. I don't remember if it was allowable in Tinley Park without a variance. I don't recall. And we provided the landscaping. So the intent was that we didn't want to do just one. We wanted to far exceed all 3 of them. And that's what we felt we did. We did do that for Will County, and I'm pretty sure we did it for Tinley Park at the time.
Great. I appreciate you bringing that up because, and emphasizing that point, that you didn't go with the minimum, you actually far exceeded it. And that backs up what
The
you
owner
stated.
insisted upon that. He did.
That's good, and I appreciate that. That's, it shows good faith and it shows
Absolutely.
intent. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Resident side of the wall as well.
Yes, there's landscaping trees on the resident side of the wall as well. We could have moved our fueling station much, much closer to the property line if we had chose to because of the Will County ordinance, but there was no intent of doing that.
Great. So assuming we don't have any of the fine details about what those numbers are, we don't have those here, but as I understand some of the concerns that have been raised and we're going to assume are going to be raised, all of the buffer mechanisms that you just described there,
Yes.
potentially I could see in the future, because you have more, you've essentially chosen all 3, that presents an opportunity sometime in the future to make a change and degrade one of them, distance, for instance. So,
Actually, that's not possible.
okay.
There's a detention area that's part of that distance that won't be disturbed.
Oh,
There's a mound
Yeah, you're
with a
right.
fence on top of it. No one's going to touch that. And then, of course, the landscape isn't in place. So really, there's not really an opportunity for changing those 3.
the access way that runs along the west end there, to the east of the drainage detention there,
Correct.
that is not a right-of-way, right? It's
No, it's a private driveway.
So, I mean, to that end, you could build out west. It might not be practical or realistic, but I'm just trying to anticipate things that could happen to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on this end here.
Well, there's a very long detention area there that extends from the north 2/3 of the way through the lot. So, yeah, it would not be practical, but I don't know if that'd even be possible.
Okay.
In offsetting that detention, because when you do the additional development, you have further detention on top of it. So
Right.
how would you ever take care of all the detention? Ryan, our civil engineer, is here, probably hasn't had time to digest that, but just speaking in general terms, I don't think it'd be possible to offset that detention. It's just not, we need the detention to meet at the time, the county's ordinance, but now this also maybe deferred still to the county?
Yeah,
Or Tinley
the
Park
W-
has its own?
We have our own.
Yeah,
This
so-
This is not WMRD, but.
Yeah, so the detention area's there, and I don't think there'd be any desire to change it.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't actually specifically referring to encroaching into the detention area. But I don't want to go too far down that road, okay? So I just wanted to understand the point that was made about the buffer,
Mhm.
all right?
Absolutely.
So I already brought up about the definition of truck stop. I just wanted to make sure we understood that. You began reading it.
The only-
And if from what you have there agrees with what Mr. Teeman stated, then I'm fine with that.
It's exactly the same, and we're only using that term with respect to a video gaming, relative to video gaming. It's not used as part of our zoning analysis.
You mean the state's video gaming, so that they could be in compliance with the
Right.
state's?
The word truck
video
stop
gaming.
only comes into the conversation because of video gaming.
Right. The Village of Tinley Park does not
not
have
recognize
the
it as a
definition
truck
of
stop.
truck stop.
Correct.
The zoning would be according to our own zoning.
Our own zoning, that's correct, sir.
But are you, so you brought up the point of truck stop for a new class of liquor license.
For when they create a new liquor license, they are considering creating a packaged liquor unique to a truck stop.
Incorporating the
video
word,
gaming.
incorporating the term truck stop,
I believe so.
which would in effect
I
be
really
creating
wasn't
a
part
new
of it.
definition.
Yeah, it was something that the mayor's office and Rob Zimmer put together at the committee of the whole, and I
But-
just looked at the memo.
Yeah,
because-
the draft that was prepared by the village attorney, he had sent a copy to me to take a look at, but what they do is they reference truck stop as defined by the Illinois Gaming
Okay.
Act, not a truck stop in general with a different definition.
Yeah, liquor license are not part of our purview,
No,
but
it's
I
not.
just want to make sure that, but zoning is. So I just want to make sure that I understand in any recommendation we make, what's going to happen with that, and is there going to be carving out of a new definition here? So it doesn't sound to me like that's the intent, so we can move on from there. Going back to the point about the estimate in traffic, I will tell you that my assumption would be that traffic is going to increase, and I would expect that that is also the assumption or the hope of the petitioner, because you're looking to increase your revenue based on liquor and gaming. I would feel more comfortable understanding what that change would be, and having something a little more concrete than an estimate. I realize a couple of weeks is not enough time to do a formal traffic study, but if we had something more to base that on, I would feel comfortable with that, given that one of the major concerns that I've already heard is just traffic. And if there's a concern that the existing traffic is a problem, certainly increasing the traffic
Well,
more is just
we haven't done yet. The numbers that Mr. McHenry gave you were his estimates, his experience with the business. We can certainly have somebody go out there, our employee, keep track of the traffic in and out on a daily basis for a short period of time, and use that as a starting point. We do hope that we're going to get more business, obviously, but we're going to find that we're not going to be a destination. Somebody's going to come in to buy a six-pack of beer as a separate item. They're going to come in to buy gasoline. They're going to come in to get a car wash. They're going to come in to get maybe the beer, maybe the milk, whatever. So we're not going to appreciably pick up that much more traffic and business because of the liquor sales. We're hoping, obviously, that our total sales go up, but the number of people in and out isn't going to go up in proportion to the increase in sales.
Do you have a basis for that?
Pardon?
Do you have a basis for that? As I
Just-
understand, the petitioner
Just
owns
my
other
just my gut
facilities.
feeling. But again, we can take a look at those numbers and get some projections, estimates, whatever, back over
Okay,
to
there are
you.
other licenses within the states, and it'd be fabulous if one of your employees went out there. I'd be more comfortable with some sort of independent analysis or something that's been done from similar facilities licensed throughout the state, so that we had some actual concrete basis for these numbers here. Likewise, you mentioned not really having any issues historically with police or fire or anything like that. Is it accurate that this, because it's in unincorporated Will County, falls under the jurisdiction of the Will County Sheriff's Office?
This is currently under the jurisdiction of the Will County Sheriff, yes.
Okay. So again, given that we would be, the Village of Tinley Park Police Department would be taking that on.
Yes.
For my part, looking at the standards, understanding public health, safety, all of that, it would be good to have some hard information, some hard data to back that up as well.
Okay.
That should be relatively easy to get from the Will
Yes.
County Sheriff's Department. I don't know if in the staff review, I mean the departmental review, when it goes out, if the Tinley Park Police could request that information independently. that would
You're
be
wanting to
useful.
know what historically, is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
The statement was made that they haven't had a problem in the past.
Mhm. Okay,
I don't know if that's true or not.
okay.
You know, when we go through the public hearing, we're going to be working with finding of fact. I would prefer that we have a fact to base that up, to back that up. Otherwise, we're potentially making decisions off of something that was stated that's, I don't know if it's true or not. So you Paula, you mentioned earlier that the Village of Frankfort is not contiguous anywhere in the area. And I looked at the map myself, I recognize that. And also in the staff report, you reference our comprehensive plan, which you're familiar with my opinion on that, that we're approaching the year 2020 from comprehensive plan written in 1999. And but within that, the comprehensive plan, because it is still our comprehensive plan, it lists certain objectives. And also, as well in there, it references back in 1999 that the Village of Tinley Park had boundary agreements with all surrounding communities, and that our boundaries had been set. So there were no, that all the future boundaries were set. I'm going to assume that that's true. So with respect to Frankfort or Matson or any other community that is on the other side of the unincorporated areas, as far as you know, is that an accurate statement?
No longer. I mean, I actually was part of those agreements when I was in Frankfurt, but that has expired.
So
there
they're all
is-
expired, so
I couldn't tell you about Madison, but Frankfurt
I'm
is
sorry,
expired.
let me get to the point. My point is that this property here is contiguous with the Village of Tinley Park, but we do have built-up areas, and it's conceivable that sometime in the future, some other community could annex right up to that point, right? So there's no agreement with any other community that prevents them from annexing into another community in the future.
There is no agreement currently that would prevent this property from annexing to another community except the lack of contiguity.
Okay. All right. All right. All right, I think we ran through the questions I had.
We got one more for follow-up.
Certainly. I'm going through my notes here to see if I had anything else, but while I'm doing that, please.
Mr. Tiemann, just, and Paula, going to a point that the chairman brought up. A statement of fact was made that your landscaping far exceeds Tinley Park's ordinances, or to that point.
No, that's not what
No.
I stated.
Well, that's what Mr. Tiemann said. It's not what you stated, but that's what he stated, I believe. And maybe
No,
I misheard, so.
The buffer area between the property to the west and what we have done in terms of berming, landscaping, fencing, and distance exceeds the requirements of Village of Tinley Park.
Okay. Yet, the landscape audit, according to staff report, found deficiencies with the landscaping.
Correct.
It was mostly trees that had
A
died.
couple trees that died.
Okay. Can we for the public hearing, can we please be made aware of what the deficiencies are?
Yeah, they're
with
in
that?
your packet. It's under the
Where does it say that?
enforcement letter.
Where is it at?
It's
I just seen that includes the
Letter
landscape.
under village
the
letterhead.
inspection letter. But I can put that
It's towards the end of the packet.
It's towards the end.
in your staff report for next time.
Oh, the annexation letter?
There should be.
I'm looking at this. This
Barb
one.
has it there.
It's in here on page 10, under planning on the bottom, on the second page.
Oh, the actual drawing, okay. If I recall, it was.
Oh, there's no separate landscape, okay.
Yeah.
If-
But it's under planning there.
Yeah,
What
I
you
see
don't
that
have
now.
is the exhibit, and I can get you the exhibit. I believe there was 4 or 5 trees that were expired, or shrubs that were expired.
Yeah, please, I'd just like to know what the deficiencies
Sure.
are that were found.
Sure thing.
And,
So, some of the items from the staff report that were discussed were the owner has agreed to install no idling of truck sign along the west access drive. Is that-
Those, I think, are part of the annexation agreement. That's not part of the staff report. I just provided you what went to the committee of the whole.
Okay, you're right. Okay. Well, so as part of site plan approval, though, is that a fair statement, though? I mean, that is accurate?
Pardon me?
That in the village manager's memo, I think it's from the village manager.
Just be clear, we're not doing any site plan review
Right.
for this project because there's no building permit required.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're right. We're strictly talking about zoning, you're saying?
Yes. The only things for your consideration would be the rezoning of the property and the granting of a special use, 2 special uses.
Okay. Well, still, whether we're looking at it under site plan approval or special use, to Commissioner Croner's point earlier about the sign ordinance, and even though basically looking at what the owner is willing to do based on conditions. So that's what I'm getting to. So
Yeah,
what-
the sign, as I mentioned, and this was with additional attorney legal review, I actually have that. I can cite you the section in our zoning code. Actually, I think I put it in your staff report. On page,
there's a little bit about it on page 3.
on page 3.
Section 10 you're talking about?
Page 3, yes, section 9, in 1, signs existing at the time of the enactment of this section or any amendment thereto, or at the time of annexation to the village of the property on which they are located and not conforming to the provisions of this section. So in other words, any signs existing that are non-conforming shall be regarded as non-conforming signs. Non-conforming signs shall be of 2 types, either a legal non-conforming sign or an illegal non-conforming sign.
And I understand that.
Yes.
I fully understand that. But
Uh-huh.
again, in order for me to have any chance of voting in favor of this, and I know I'm only 1 vote on the commission, I would expect that this property be brought up to our signing ordinance. First, identify what the deficiencies are,
Right.
and then have the petitioner agree to make those changes. I agree, and I fully acknowledge, I understand what Paula is saying in her staff report, what she's got there, but I'm just letting you know, for my vote, that's where we would need to be. We just spent too much time on sign ordinances, and it's an entry point to our village.
And we understand your position.
Thank you.
Much in the same spirit, there's a lot of points that I was bringing up, which I would likewise expect to be addressed by the time we get to public hearing. The reason I bring up the idling of trucks is because it is a concern with, as part of the standards. And I will tell you from my own personal experience that simply putting up a sign and it's on private property, I'm pretty sure that's not legally enforceable unless it's a right-of-way or there's a parking lot agreement of some sort with the village.
An agreement with the village. And
So-
it's enforceable through the annexation agreement.
Okay,
because it
so
would be-
is that the intent? For it to be enforceable? Because all this says is they'll put up a sign.
It's putting up a sign, and certainly, I mean, I think from common sense would say you might question how that would be administered, but the petitioner has stated that he would administer that and enforce that, and doesn't find that to be a problem now, is what you told me when we met.
Okay.
That he's not experiencing this issue now. And I just asked for it because I wanted to make sure it was clear that that's what we didn't want to see.
Great. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to cover all those items. Hopefully, we've recorded what some of those are, so that we can get the open points worked out between now and the public hearing. Look forward to seeing the resolution on that. And any additional information we can get on any of those open points in advance of the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? No? Okay. Getting back to our agenda for this evening. Looks like my computer has signed me out. We do not have any more items on there, so at this point, if there's no other comments from the commissioners, we can move to public comment. Am I going out of order here? So we have an agenda.
Oh, you did.
Good of the order, but we can do this.
Yes, good of the order. I know up front you made an introduction, so did you have
You
any
can go ahead and take
additional
public
items
comments so we don't have to make them wait. I can do that later.
Okay, that sounds good. So, thank you for your patience. Thank you for sitting through the public hearing. Look forward to hearing from you. Once again, I just want to state my appreciation for all you guys coming out and giving your comment, being heard. Again, this is not a public hearing. This is not testimony. Nobody has to give their name or anything. If you decide to come back for public hearing, that is a requirement. It's a quasi-legal activity. So with that, I would just ask that we understand that we're going to engage with the community right here, but it's not technically a Q&A, but absolutely, we're, as you could tell, we're trying to get everything out there on the table and make sure that when we go to public hearing, everything is addressed and hopefully even resolved. So with that.
Okay, well, thank you. I greatly appreciate your time also. During Ms. Walwich's presentation, she had mentioned the businesses that are currently there. And what I heard her say was the gas station, the convenience store, the Dunkin' Donuts, Beggars, and the car wash. So that's 5 businesses, and looking to add 2 more, so 7 businesses. I read through the zoning ordinance book, and I was trying to figure out what is the requirement for number of parking spots required on this type of property. And from what I read, also the frontage of 25 feet cannot be used. We're very concerned that this is going to cause a problem with parking. Already, it's a traffic problem, there's congestion problem, there's in and out problem. What will happen with adding these 2 additional businesses, and where will there be parking, and what is your requirement for parking? Because I saw the chart, and from what I read, a drive-through needs 20 spots. The convenience store is based on the square footage of the building. Seeing that there are 5 gaming machines, probably 5 spots just for that. What would the requirement be on that? I didn't read it, I didn't find it in the report.
That's a fair point. And Paula, that's not in the staff report, I believe, but it is, am I assuming correctly that because we're not doing site plan approval, is that why it's not in there?
As part of the annexation, they're annexing the condition and uses as they currently exist. The understanding I have from our attorney that that's the way the annexation agreement will address that. I can certainly do an analysis for you for the public hearing.
So, at least as discussed at the committee of the whole, they're looking at considering an annexation agreement without, and just accepting what exists without knowing?
The annexation agreement has specific language that allows for the continuation of existing uses and then.
No, I understand that.
And the
I
addition of-
understand what
Oh.
they're going to consider.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that I don't understand that, and to her point about the gap between if it was new versus what's existing, it would be good information to know
Absolutely.
what the village is annexing, what
Absolutely.
we're accepting as a pre-existing situation, so that we're doing it with our eyes open.
Absolutely.
And, if they decide to do that, okay, but right now, it sounds to me like we don't know.
Absolutely.
Paula, is the resident right? Will this be considered as 7 separate businesses? So we'll be looking at 7 separate parking?
We have
requirements?
opportunities in the code for shared parking. There's shared parking opportunities. So I haven't done an analysis, but I can certainly do that for you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. My next question was in regards to parking for commercial vehicles. Listening to the last presentation, we had heard that commercial vehicles, that they need to be out of the public view. How will that work with this? When the trucks pull in, there's nothing blocking that you can see the trucks, and they do idle. And tied in with that question, why is a sign being put up telling them not to idle? So does that mean the sign is telling the truck driver to turn off and park and stay? I'm kind of confused on why that sign, what does it mean?
I think the concern over idling trucks is the pollution from
Yes.
the sunlight. And that's why the town is stipulating, I believe, and I don't mean to speak for anybody, so if I'm wrong, yell at me. You don't want, and that's why we asked Mr. McHenry how many spots there are for trucks to sit there and park, and he has stated there are only 2 spots, other than the fueling bays, but there are only 2 spots on the property where they can sit.
Okay.
So as far as your thought, we don't want the trucks sitting there idling and blowing off all that diesel smoke into the residents behind, because that's something that nobody wants with. So I think that's why we're saying no trucks set to idle. And a lot of times, these diesel trucks, it takes a lot of fuel to turn them off, let them rest, and then start them up again. It's far more efficient to just let them sit there, let them idle. They go run in and do what they want. But certainly, there's only 2 spots. There's not a lot of space for these diesel trucks to sit and idle.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Could we just address one point that you had there? You were referencing back to the public hearing from earlier today. I would probably ask for staff validation on this point, but I believe that requirement is for commercial vehicles that are part of the business or
And they're parked overnight.
Yes.
That's why they.
yeah, so in that example, the buses belong to the school and it's part of that operation, whereas these vehicles would be customers. So I agree with you on your point that Commissioner Croner addressed there. I just wanted to make sure we weren't throwing those in there, kind of commingling the 2 thoughts there. Does that make sense?
Yes, that also now brings up the next question in regards to if this is going to legally be called a truck stop. With the Illinois Gaming Board, the canopy above the diesel pumps say trucks. There's going to be parking for trucks. Who has the jurisdiction to make sure that nobody's parking overnight or parking for an extended period of time? What is the limit that a truck will be allowed to stand there?
That's absolutely a fair question. Hopefully, we can resolve some of these things between now and the public hearing.
Because my property does abut this property where I live. I do see this. So these are our concerns. I had provided to you some information in regards to the residential, the R2 zoning, and on how you don't have any properties in Tinley Park that are on gas stations that abut single-family homes. And we are also concerned about the 24/7 gambling. And in order to get the 24/7 gambling, this property is asking to be zoned into a B3 with the truck stop. So those are our concerns. Everything is tied in together. We're hoping this isn't just about the money. We're hoping that the neighborhood and the community is considered. We're hoping that the village realizes on how this annexation and rezoning of the subject property for the Tinley Park to be able to turn this into the liquor store and gambling site is going to have a negative effect on the community. You've got a property that is a Tinley Park home that is less than 200 feet from where the diesel fuel pumps are. That is very close. And if this is going to be called a truck stop, what kind of more traffic is that going to have with the gambling machines there? And if a truck driver needs to, I'm not too sure on how their logs work, but if they need to take that time and they see the recreation there, what is this going to cost? And who is going to have the jurisdiction to tell the truck driver, you got to get the truck out of here? We're concerned about the children that now walk over there and get their slushies and their candies, and they're walking past parked trucks. That is a very, very big concern for us. That is not appropriate next to homes that are in an R2 district. We're just hoping that this isn't going to be setting a precedent and be giving preferential treatment for this zoning, for the gas station, truck stops, liquor stores. You don't have gas sold in any other liquor store. There are liquor stores in gas stations. The video gambling is going to be 24/7. Your other licenses within Tinley Park do not have a 24-hour time. This is right next to homes, in a gas station, 24-hour gambling. Do you want Tinley Park to be the place that now at 3 a.m., that's where everyone goes because the other ones are shut down? It's inappropriate next to homes. At this point, that's all that I do have to say, but so I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Could I ask?
Yes.
You're
Yes.
Mrs. Clark? You're the one who did this packet?
Yes, I did.
Okay. We haven't had a chance, obviously, at least I haven't had a chance to review it. I think most of us just got it tonight.
Just
Yes.
received it.
But you made a statement, and I'm going to follow up as we did to Mr. Tiemann and Mr. Pritchard, right? That kids are crossing in front of trucks that are parked. If you will take photos of these trucks that are parked in the streets or wherever they are and submit them in 2 weeks, or submit it to staff before that so they can be part of our packet before that. Is it in the packet here?
There's a very good example inside that packet.
Okay.
It's maybe 15 pages in.
We'll take a look at it, but if you,
This is the page that you're looking for.
okay, well, we'll take a look at it. And you've done what I've asked, and we'll look at that for the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I would raise a question that is existing.
Sorry?
What you're stating is existing.
Correct, yeah,
Our
I just want.
annexation of this would not change that.
Exactly. I'm just asking for her, she made a statement of fact, I'm just asking for support to back up that statement of fact, just as we did with the petitioner, to be fair to everyone.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. I will be presenting most of this at the open public hearing, but I just have a few statements to make as well.
Sure.
There was a question earlier about how close the school, the nearest school was, and we've got approximately a quarter of a mile. The Summit Hill K-8 elementary school is located there, so there are school children and bus stops. There's like 12 bus stops right on 194th and then 190 for these children in Lakeside. So, plus we have the bus stops for the Lincoln Way school kids, which is still part of our Tinley group, as you know. Historically, going back to 2012, I think the lawyer mentioned it earlier, we have been opposed to these propositions of even having the gas station there, and it is there now. But over 700 residents petitioned opposing these permits and so forth that would have been included in Will County before these laws were changed. And we went door to door to get those signatures as a group. And also the Brookside Glen area has also unanimously agreed with us in opposition to this. And the basic opposition being the traffic, the crime, the safety, those issues. And now we're talking about, as you said, increasing traffic, and we're even increasing some of these other issues relative to the safety of our children and our residents. We were asking for facts, and as we fought this in the Will County area, of course, the 2 times it was vetoed by those representatives for our county. It was also vetoed by the Frankfort Township, and it was also letters of support regarding those traffic issues were given to as evidence from one of the commissioners. So these traffic issues are, in his opinion, even very viable concerns. I would also state that, and I have it in my report, like I said, I'm going to be giving, but relative to the crime, I did FOIA information from the Tinley Park area from 2012 to like 2015 or whatever it was. And I did have some stats relative to those issues that I just wanted to share with you. It'll be presented too at the public hearing.
So, ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate that you're very prepared and you have some data to back yourself up. I would advise you don't need to go through it tonight, but if you have material prepared, I would request that you get that to the commissioners.
It's part of the.
Oh, it's already in this
it's there, I
packet?
believe.
Oh, excellent. You guys are all working together.
We are working together, and we've been working together for a
So
long
my
time.
reason for that is the last thing we want is to show up for a public hearing and get this, because we don't have time to absorb it.
Exactly,
Well,
which is just why just some basic points I'm reviewing, if
Please,
that's
please.
okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
Keep
that's
going.
okay. The other thing is, I did FOIA the police department for updated information since this goes back to 2015 and prior to that. And just a few stats, I'm not going to bore you with anything else, but for some of the studies, we actually have a whole binder full of current studies from 2000 on. But anyway, from these studies, it's on the crime issues. The operation hours are the strongest factor in store robberies, particularly those that are open 24 hours a day. Late evening to early morning hours carry a risk of being targeted. Robbers commonly consider escape routes an important factor in selecting a target, and that's where the safety comes in. And according to the stats, there were 31 disorderly intoxications, 49 petty thefts, 5 armed robberies, and so forth. I won't bore you with all these. You've got the information. But basically, those are our concerns. We have the children, as Linda mentioned, going for slushies and whatever, and now the gaming might be there. Who's going to monitor? Who's going to check those? In a casino, as you know, the IDs are they're going to check that before you go through the door. And we've got teenagers that, the high schools and so forth, if the gaming's there, that might be an issue. And I think if you can go home and read this material and realize how much of an effort we've been putting in for the last 6 years, you'll understand as residents that as Tinley Village residents that we moved here for a reason. It's one of the best communities, and yet something like this can really be a downfall, and it's just been devastating to all of us as residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Arnold. I want to start off by commending the Village of Tinley Park for carefully crafting their ordinances and rules to create one of the safest and prosperous suburbs in all of the Chicagoland area. As a matter of fact, as recently as 2017, they were voted one of the most family-friendly villages in the United States. I hope you all realize the number of rules that granting this annexation will be creating and changing in the village of Tinley Park. Currently, there are no truck stops in Tinley Park. This will create a truck stop for the first time in Tinley Park. There is only one gas station that allows packaged liquor, and that was grandfathered in. You will now have a gas station that is selling packaged liquor. There are no 24-hour gambling establishments in all of Tinley Park, and no gambling establishments that directly abut R2 residential housing. The reason I bring all of these up is that by establishing all of these new rules and bending all of these rules for this establishment, you are leaving it open to other businesses who want to say, me too. What is to stop another establishment or another business owner from building another truck stop on the border of Tinley Park and then coming in and saying, hey, annex me too? There's nothing. Any judge would say that's disparate treatment of these two operators and grant them their annexation. Additionally, other convenience stores in Tinley Park will certainly try to find a loophole in the rule that you're crafting to allow them to sell packaged liquor. The same thing with gambling establishments. That is my first point. My second point I would like to make tonight is that what we are considering here is putting truckers, gambling, and liquor all in the same place. That's just silly, honestly. It was stated earlier this evening that this is not a destination, and as a matter of fact, that assurance was made to the residents that this wouldn't be a destination. Yet, as soon as the truck awning went up, all along I-80, hey, come to Lenny's for gas, truckers. And guess what? A constant stream of trucks from I-80 use this establishment. And who are these truckers? I don't know who these truckers are. Do they have criminal records? Are they sex offenders? I have no idea. But by establishing the 24-hour gambling there, I can assure you that Lenny is going to put up signs all along I-80, hey, truckers, come on in and gamble. So now we have truckers coming in and parking their rigs there and going in and gambling and maybe picking up a six-pack, heading back out to their truck and drinking it in their rig, while all the kids come by with their slushies in the afternoon. This is no place for that type of establishment. This borders single-family homes. It is inappropriate for this to be in this location with all of these added businesses on top of what is already an onerous thing for the residents that have had to deal with this for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else from the public that would like to speak this evening? Okay. Any other final comments or questions from any of the commissioners this evening?
Question, was this originally zoned commercial by the county, or was it rezoned from residential to commercial?
No, actually, this property was zoned commercial by the county prior or at the same time that the zoning for residential was created to the west. There were two subdivisions that were created back in not sure the time frame. I think it was the late 80s, 88, 89, 1990, somewhere of that part. The property on the north, residential to the west, commercial C2 on the east. The southern portion, residential on the west, C3 commercial, higher intensity commercial on the east. So our parcel was zoned at the time we began the process with the county. Our parcel was zoned C2 on the north. There's two pieces of property there, C2 on the north, C3 on the south. We downzoned the southern portion to C2 to make it less intense, and we currently have C2 on both parcels. The C2 allows for a gas station. We could have never gone to the county, could have gone in and applied for a building permit for a gas station, could have had the diesel pumps, could have been closer to the property line, could have done a lot of things, but we tried to be cooperative with the neighbors, and but the property, in answer to your question, yes, before we purchased the property, it was zoned C2, and it was zoned C2 before any of the neighbors lived in their subdivision.
Thank you.
Could I add one thing to that? Is that okay?
Sure.
When we first moved there, we've been there almost, let's see, almost 18 years, and some of our other neighbors have been there 20 or more. Yes, that was a commercial piece of property. As a matter of fact, when this all started at the Will County level, Mr. McHenry came and knocked on our doors to introduce himself. And I said to him, you know, I'd like you to walk back in our backyard, and this is before the gas station was built, of course, and I'd like to show you the swing set that my grandchildren are on. And I said, would you want a gas station over there? And he said, I wouldn't have bought the property in the first place because it's a commercial thing. And I said, my husband and I tried to buy the property adjacent to our home. However, it was zoned commercial. We never thought it would be a gas station because a gas station is like 3 blocks away to the south. And there's all these other things in our town. And we've heard so much about Tinley Park. So we wanted to be in Tinley Park. Never ever thinking a gas station would be what he would put up there. So that's A. In regards to the buffering with the trees, and if it hasn't changed, according to those rules way back in 2013 or whatever it was, there was supposed to be 2 rows of trees to block the noise. That's not on the property. There is some nice landscaping, but that's not there to block the noise. And the fence that he's been talking about, it's a plastic fence. So that noise is still not the same as what we would think. And of course, since the gas station has opened and the trucks have been coming in, there has been an increase in traffic. And truthfully, if there's going to be an independent study, that would be wonderful, but do it all day long, because not just at certain times when there isn't any traffic. You know, there are, of course, certainly gaps, of course, on Harlem Avenue. But I'll tell you this, I still take my grandchildren to school every day, and when I try to get out from our residential street, sometimes there are 4 or 5 cars and trucks coming in, and it has been difficult. And that never happened before. So that's just an honest opinion from a resident. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think a couple things have come up this evening, if we could just add to the open questions, at least for my mind. The history of this, I believe for Will County zoning, this was not a special use, I don't think, right? This fell under...
No, I'd have to research it.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
But certainly, so that we're all clear on this point, the proposed rezoning, it is a special use, or this use would be a special use under B3.
If we decide on a B3, yes.
Right. Okay. So be clear so that...
It could be permitted in a B5, but then you're going to be bringing in other opportunities for other uses.
Right. At least from the staff recommendation, is not to consider B5, it's to consider B3. And also then we're looking at a special use situation, not a straight up entitlement situation, right? Okay, just to make sure we're all clear on that point. Okay, so I appreciate everyone's time this evening. We put a lot of things out there, and hopefully, we're kind of bringing everything to the table. If there are no further comments or questions, do we have a good of the order section for this evening?
Just a few things. As I mentioned, I'm really happy to have Kimberly here on staff. The fact that she came back the second day was when I got a little relieved. So I think she's here to stay. At least that's what she's telling me. Kept her very busy already, and she's already had a lot of night meetings. So, actually saw the chairman. I've had the opportunity. I haven't been out of the office much for quite a while, but I'm getting greedy, and so I went to an RTA /APA session last week. That's when I ran into you. And it was all on TODs, transit-oriented development. And it's just always good for staff to get out of the office sometimes and kind of see how other people are doing things. And then today, both Kimberly and I were able to go back. This one was sponsored by the MDRN. It's the Municipal Design Review Network. And I think I've told you I've been working on some guidelines, design guidelines. And this is a group I've been acquainted with. They started about 11, 12 years ago. And there's been, right when the state of Illinois started enabling design to be legislated and giving communities the authority to regulate design. So this is something I've been working on for a while. And so we both attended a session today that was really enlightening. Of course, you pay the price when you're away from the office and you come back and don't get the PowerPoint up right. So I do apologize. That's all on me, not on anyone else. It is done, and it's sitting over there on my desk, and I must not have saved it correctly, so I apologize for that. Software, we're still working on that. I would like to be working faster on it, but I think with Kimberly here, I'll be able to work a little bit quicker on it. In terms of development projects, PAWS will be before you here, I think in 2 meetings from now. You're familiar with their facility out on 191st. We actually worked with them over the past year trying to find them a new site. They've been unsuccessful, but through some donations and an Eagle Scout project, they're looking at building an accessory structure out there, and for some storage and so forth. So that'll be before you. Actually, that is before them. It is before them, not the ZBA. Yeah, because it was a PUD.
It's the same
It almost
way
went to
as this
ZBA.
public hearing.
Yeah, it almost went to ZBA as a variance, but it's part of the same PUD that we dealt with the residences, so it becomes a substantial deviation. So it comes to you rather than the ZBA. So we're still working on downtown projects. We've been working with the marketing department on an annual report, as well as working through the final stages of the Lakota contract on the downtown plaza, working all the operational aspects of that. Then once we finish that, probably in the next week, we'll bring that back together with the design element that was my portion of it. And so we'll have that as a final package to finish that project. We're also finalizing an incentive program for the downtown called the Oak Park Playbook. That's if you've been watching any of the board meetings and committee meetings. It's been reviewed by the Economic Development and Marketing Committee. And so we're putting the final touches on 5 different incentive programs that would facilitate business in the downtown. So that's exciting. And I had one other I was just going to mention, and it flew out my brain. I think that's it. We're busy, but we've got it under control, and we're finishing up the final selection of the senior planner position. We had interviews, was that last week or this week? Was it this week? This week. And so we're coming down to the final selection on that. And so we should be able to have some good news on that shortly.
You have an update on the mental health center RFP? So I know we had some
Yes, actually just
some
had a meeting.
submissions that were opened, and
Yep.
what's our timeline?
Yep, had a meeting just on that today, actually, when I got back from Chicago, when I should have been doing the PowerPoint. So we have a summary, kind of an executive summary on each of the proposals. We're just at the staff level working through the proposals and making sure that each of them met the guidelines. Don't have a timeline for you right now. It'll certainly be reviewed. I think the intention at this point is to solicit the board members' comments on the RFPs that we received.
Sounds good. I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Once again, welcome.
You'll be back to another meeting? Thank you. Okay, very good.
Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion to dismiss the regular meeting.
So moved.
Move Commissioner Stanton, second.
Second.
Commissioner Kerr, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you.